Ever since God of War's Norse Saga ended with Kratos once again becoming the God of War in Valhalla, I've been seeing a very interesting sentiment online that goes along the lines of, I'm satisfied with Kratos' story, he has nothing more to say, I think God of War should end here. Of course, this sentiment speaks to how complete and satisfying the ending of Kratos' latest chapter is, but it's also surprising to see that some people are so satisfied with it that they think that God of War as a whole, or Kratos as a protagonist, are done in a narrative sense. Obviously, I'm talking about this purely from a storytelling perspective. We all know that realistically there is absolutely no Earth in the entire multiverse where Kratos is done for good. The only way one of PlayStation's most valuable characters won't continue to frontline one of PlayStation's most valuable franchises is if a meteor falls on the entirety of Sony Corp and somehow deletes all of their IPs forever. But the question remains, does Kratos have anything more to say as a character? Or has the well of character complexity, flaws, and life lessons that is the Ghost of Sparta finally dried up? To assess that, we must first define what Kratos was saying as a character in the first place. Kratos' motivations and flaws were defined very simply at the very start of God of War 1. A brutal warrior with no apparent regard for human life, suffering from severe PTSD and mistakes of his past. Getting rid of the memory of slaying his family was the motivator throughout practically the entirety of the Greek saga. All of his immoral and rageful actions stemmed from this pain. Kratos served the gods and killed Ares solely under the false pretense that they will erase the memories of his past. When he learned that the gods never intended to do that, Kratos eased the pain with the fires of conquest. When he was punished for that too, he got understandably occupied with revenge, to the point where he destroyed everything. And of course, at the end, the only thing that wasn't gone was that same pain. Kratos looked for forgiveness within himself to unlock the power of hope, but in the process, he caused so much more pain. And that's exactly what the Norse Saga is about. Even though perhaps Kratos made peace with killing his family or Athena, he never got to process the destruction he caused in the meantime. Understandably, instead of facing these traumas head-on, Kratos chose to hide away from them. By physically getting far away from his home, by distancing himself from civilization and especially gods altogether, choosing to live as a recluse mortal, by shoving the blades he killed his family with away in a basement, by hiding everything and anything that had to do with his previous identity. Inevitably, the echoes of his past would eventually come to haunt Kratos when his son was born, and then his wife Faye died. The realization that hiding himself from Atreus not only harms him, but makes him become the very person and god Kratos feared the boy would be if he opened up to him. This forced Kratos to finally stare his past in the face, to use the Blades of Chaos again, but this time to save his child, to face him killing his father, and be honest about it with Atreus. And by wanting his son to be better than him, by wanting to teach him the lessons he learned the hard way, a crazy thing started to happen. Kratos learned those things himself. In Ragnarok, Kratos faced his past in a much more direct way. Gods who are a threat to him and Atreus, gods who want to undo all the progress he'd made and revert him back to the monster of old. Freya, who Kratos brought back to his side by being entirely open and honest about his past pain, by finally accepting that his destructive power or his military and divine nature could be used to save and protect, and not only conquer and destroy. At last, in Valhalla, Kratos faced his past in the most literal way yet. He saw his home physically, he saw the places where he pillaged and murdered, he saw the memories of his most heinous acts, and even had a fun little time chatting with a decapitated head of one of his Olympian victims, a reflection of his self-deprecating nature. And at the very end, Kratos did the hardest thing, the thing that he refused to do from the very beginning. Kratos faced his past by facing himself, and he accepted him. He accepted all he'd done. He accepted what he was And even if what he was defined him, it didn't have to moving forward. The massive theme of past regrets was resolved as Kratos sat on his new throne. A theme that directly intertwines with it is the theme of godhood, or more accurately, the theme of power. As a young teen, Kratos failed to save his brother Deimos from kidnapping. This traumatic core memory shaped Kratos' mentality. By being powerless in that moment, he chose to compensate the pain that followed by being as powerful as possible. Kratos' ambition to become the greatest general in Spartan history and never lose a battle led to the servitude to Ares and the death of his family. As he served the god of war and then Olympus, Kratos grew stronger and more powerful, often equipped with the strongest weapons and magic the gods had to offer. Single-handedly, Kratos was able to break away from the Furies, chain Atlas and Hades, defeat Persephone, recover Pandora's box, and finally, defeat the god of war himself. When given the powers of a god, Kratos chose to abuse them because of the aforementioned pain of his past. He drowned his sorrows by leading legions, destroying cities, and trying to prove his worth to Olympus. When his power was taken away from him by Zeus, Kratos' goal became to take it back in order to kill him. It's fascinating to notice that the thing that Kratos is after in every game of the Greek trilogy is power. The power from Pandora's box, his godly power within the Blade of Olympus, and then the power from Pandora's box, again, for some reason. At the end, when Kratos unlocks the ultimate power, the power of hope, and uses it to end the greatest power in the world, he is only left with the realization that the power he's been chasing only brought the death and destruction of everyone and everything he cared about. Naturally, Kratos came to resent his power, his godly power. The biggest traumas in his life came from the mere fact that he was a son of Zeus. Deimos was taken, and he was picked as the champion of Ares, all because of the elusive prophecies that caused the gods to fear they'll lose their power. And just like all the other gods, when given this power, Kratos chose to use it for selfish reasons, careless about what harm it could cause. Just like the mistakes of his past, Kratos chose to walk as far away from his divine nature as he could. So, when Atreus was born, when Kratos put another god on this earth, his greatest fear was to see his son abuse his power like he once did. And when a mysterious stranger knocked on the door and forced Kratos to get back in touch with his godhood, he was forced to once again face it. Just as he was forced to come to terms with his deeds, he was forced to come to terms with his nature, that he's a god, that his son is a god, that no matter what he does, he can't run away from or hide his power, but he can choose how he uses it. We see this come to pass in Ragnarok. At long last, after lifetimes of concealing both his natural power and his authority as a general, he finally brought them forth to lead the realms into Ragnarok. In that moment, he accepted his power. The last thing for him to accept was that not only did he deserve it, not only could he use it for good, but he could be more than just a protector. He could be a god, a caring god who brings love and is deserving of love. That is Kratos' journey in Valhalla, a journey where his path of accepting his past sins and his path of accepting his power came together. When he faces himself, he not only accepts that he can grow beyond the man he used to be, but he can grow beyond the god he used to be. If we look at Kratos' arcs in the two sagas, we can discern that the Greek saga is the fall of Kratos and the Norse his rise back up. Of course, there's more themes like being a father, which really came to the forefront in the Norse games, but in my eyes, those two things, Kratos' relationship with his past and his godhood, are the two core themes that defined his character. If we look at it like this, then yes, it looks like Kratos' arc is complete. He had turned from a very flawed and at times literally evil man and god to a selfless wise one who accepted himself and therefore, perhaps for the first time ever, got accepted by others. But now comes the real question. What will Kratos' flaws be moving forward? What sort of arc could he possibly have? Does he even have any more flaws to iron out? And will those flaws be nearly as impactful compared to what we've seen so far? There's a Tyr quote in Valhalla that really stuck with me, and I believe it perfectly encapsulates Kratos' potential future struggle.
Goodness is not a destination we arrive at, but a practice.
Just because Kratos reached this high, this level of self-acceptance and understanding, doesn't mean it will be easy to sustain. And just because he reached this point, doesn't mean the world around him has. Let's be honest. We can't go through the "am I still the god killer" routine again. Another Heimdall can't happen because the entire point of Ragnarok, the entire point of changing his fate, was that Kratos wasn't a god killer anymore. The reason why he didn't die by Thor's hand like prophesized is because he chose not to fight him. We can't have a rehash of that. Kratos must remain good, which isn't to say that he will be boring. There is a reason why characters like Luke Skywalker, Captain America, or Superman are so beloved, because they're entirely good people in a flawed world, because regardless of their circumstances or struggles, regardless of the temptation the power of darkness, the power of giving in to your passions and emotions has, they resist and do not give in. They stay true to their beliefs, they stay true to being selfless above all else. That willpower to overcome those temptations is what makes them great characters. Kratos has experienced the darkness like no one else. He gave into his negative emotions and the power they gave him to the point of destroying everything, and then worked hard to overcome those tendencies, to find strength in compassion. We did see Kratos arrive to a place of goodness, but we haven't seen him practice it. And the struggle to remain good is what I believe Kratos will have to go through next to remain an exciting and fresh character. Kratos is a god of war again, and as per Mimir's description,
when conflicts do arise and can't be talked through, a god of war ensures those conflicts have rules and enforces them.
Being a god of war while also being a truly good person is hard. Tyr proved that when he practically failed as the god of war himself. Finding peaceful, non-bloody solutions in the face of conflict or conquest is hard. Of course, just because Kratos reached a certain equilibrium as a person doesn't mean the people around him have. Whether it's warring Aesir who were left without a home, Thrud whose Thor genes are acting up, or a dangerous grieving Sindri, Kratos should be forced to keep his resolve in the face of physical and mental confrontation, especially when it comes to his allies. And then there's other gods. Whether Kratos visits other pantheons or other pantheons visit him, the new Norse god of war will undoubtedly encounter more deities who are as selfish and power-hungry as the Olympians or Odin. Greek-era Kratos met them where they were at, fighting fire with fire. Norse Kratos fought in self-defense and with controlled anger, but still had no issue killing. This new Kratos' entire goal is to not be what he used to be. How will Kratos be able to handle murderous gods without murdering himself? Will he be able to find peaceful solutions in the face of war? Will he be able to protect his people, something he never really had to do before? Will he be able to unite with his allies, whose worst tendencies will also reveal themselves in the face of a crisis? These are all things that could be shown and explored without regressing Kratos' character or making him go through the same arc again. Another natural step in Kratos' evolution as a character is his transition into a mentor figure. Kratos' arc so far has largely been about changing himself, but of course with the Norse games, we also saw him in a new role, the role of a teacher. As a warrior and god, as he learned from his past, he imparted what he knew to his son. Now, as a full-on Norse god and leader, one who definitely gone through some shit and came out on the other end a better man, it's time for him to impart this wisdom onto others. Whether it's being an example to other gods with fucked up families, or wanting to make a broader impact on what it means to be a god, Kratos has the ability, as a leader and a deity, to continue Tyr's mission. He's seen what mortals live like under selfish, uncaring gods, and also was one himself, and as a god of war who aims to serve his people first and foremost, it's entirely in new Kratos' nature to try and create similar change for others. Kratos used to be known as the Spartan who ends evil pantheons by eliminating them. This new Kratos appears to be one who ends evil pantheons by trying to change them for the better. Of course, very few gods, like Odin, would be willing to change, but that's the struggle. Kratos knows firsthand that even the most selfish, vile gods can turn caring and selfless because he was able to. So why can't others? Kratos found purpose in being a selfless god, and will no doubt feel the true value of serving others and being loved for it. His mere presence reshaped two pantheons, so why can't he continue to do that under a different pretense? Is Kratos' arc complete? In a sense, yes. He defeated his demons and accepted his past and present self. Does it mean that Kratos has nothing more to say as a character? Absolutely not. His struggle to retain his goodness in the face of a flawed world and a new massive responsibility, his eagerness to look to the future and create a better world not just for his home or people, but humanity as a whole. Those are all things that could be explored next. Maybe to many of you, this new Kratos will seem basic and boring. After all, God of War 3 made Kratos' arc quite complete at the time, and when the Norse games came by, Kratos was so different that a segment of the player base refused to recognize him as Kratos, or the new games as God of War, and it's possible that this third saga will do the same. Kratos had been such a flawed character, full of darkness and regret. Can a Kratos that's always truly good be nearly as interesting? If his goodness is challenged, if the world and people around him remain as flawed as he was, his attempts at being the one force of goodness in contrast could be as engaging as his past two chapters. He may be much more of a conventional protagonist because of it, but if it feels right for the character, and if Santa Monica continues to challenge him in interesting ways and tell meaningful stories, then why not? At the end of the day, God of War is about Kratos going on epic sprawling adventures, brutally eliminating a bunch of cool beasts with cool weapons, with an incredible backdrop of mythological ancient cultures, and butting heads with local gods. And I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon.